Greetings. Let us learn about polyp retrieval device, otherwise known as polyp trap. This could be a single chamber polyp trap, or more often we use a polyp trap that has multiple chambers so that you could retrieve multiple polyps, each polyp into a different chamber. So here is a case where the endoscopist has resected a polyp using cold snare resection, and the polyp has been suctioned into the biopsy channel. So what happens with the suction? When you apply suction, it goes to the suction outlet, and if you did not put the trap, it will go into the suction container. So it is very important for the endoscopy assistant and nurse to insert a polyp trap that is attached to the suction canister before a polyp is resected, so that we don't lose the opportunity to collect this specimen in the polyp trap. So once this is connected with the suction, the polyp actually ends up in the polyp trap. So this is very important. So one of the most important things when you're removing polyps using a snare, and either cold snare or hot snare, and if the specimen is small enough to be suctioned, before you give the snare, make sure that you connect the polyp trap to the suction, and then only you give the snare to the endoscopist, so as to avoid the mistake of suctioning the resected polyp going into the suctioning container, but instead it should go into the polyp trap. So make sure you do this first before giving the snare. So if multiple polyps are need to be removed, all you need to do is, once you collected one specimen, you could rotate and move it to the next container to collect the next specimen. After all the chambers in a suction trap are filled up, you can disconnect and transfer the specimens into a formalin jar, and each jar labeled according to the site from where the polyp came out. So it's important to mention jar A, ascending colon, and if you remove another polyp from the hepatic flexure, you say jar B, hepatic flexure. So each specimen should be properly labeled into the proper container. And in order to do that, make sure that you have all the containers ready so as to avoid any mistakes in managing the collection of the polyps. Sometimes if it is a larger polyp and you don't want to destroy the polyp as it goes from the biopsy channel up the scope head behind the suction button and then right angles to the umbilical cord, you could attach the polyp trap that is connected to the suction machine, and the other end, instead of the outlet on the umbilical cord, you could attach it to the biopsy port, and that might preserve the polyp tissue and avoid damage to the polyp tissue as it goes up the biopsy channel. This is not commonly used, but I wanted to share that there's an opportunity to do this also. Another cheaper way to do is to put a gauze onto the suction canister's tubing and plug it to the suction outlet, and once you suction, the gauze will trap the polyp, and this way you could avoid or save plastic and maybe helpful in limiting unnecessary wastage of plastic. Again, you want to deposit the polyp that you collected into the formalin jar. So here we have learned about the role of polyp trap to collect polyp tissue, and single most important thing to keep in mind is to set up the polyp trap before you give the snare to the endoscopist. By following that simple precaution, you would avoid the mistake of polyps getting suction into the suction container. And if that happens, all you have to do is at the end of the procedure, open the suction container and then make sure you have the polyp trap and suction all the contents from the suction container, and that's how you can retrieve the polyp tissue. I hope this is useful. Thank you.